After a day of delay and accusations, Israel's security cabinet is now expected to meet later to approve a ceasefire deal for Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the final details have now been ironed out after earlier claiming Hamas had backtracked on parts of the agreement. But Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has threatened to resign from the coalition government if the deal is approved. The full Israeli government must agree before a truce can take effect, as planned on Sunday. Well, DW correspondent Tanya Kramer is in Jerusalem, joins us now. Tanya, we're waiting for Israel to formally approve and ratify the deal. Walk us through that process. What happens next?
Yeah, we've got a statement from the Prime Minister's office very early this morning, saying that both sides have now agreed upon, they're inking out the latest details, and that the Israeli negotiating team is now on its way back from Doha to Israel. There have been in the past day, there was a real crisis over this with the Israeli Prime Minister blaming Hamas for renegotiating some of the latest details, but also a rather political crisis here internally in Israel. Now, while the crisis over these details that needed to be set in this deal seems to have been solved. Now, the political crisis seems to be ongoing still. But what is happening right now, as we are seeing, is that the Prime Minister has announced that he has called for the security cabinet, the smaller cabinet, to meet on Friday, so later today. We're expecting this to meet, but then the next step would then be that this deal will be brought to the wider cabinet in the government here. So it's not yet clear if both of them will meet actually today on Friday before Shabbat starts. There have been some indication that this could only happen also on Saturday night. We do not have the confirmation for that yet. Some commentators here in the Israeli media have questioned that. They said this could be all done today, because the result of that would be that actually the implementation of the deal, or the release of the first hostages that was all planned for Sunday, would then also be delayed.
Now, I understand that the deal does have its opponents in the Israeli government. How much leverage do those opponents of the deal have?
Well, I mean, it was expected that there's opposition to this agreement, but it became a real, I would say, political crisis here in the past 24 hours. And we heard and that is mainly due to those two far-right ministers, the finance minister Bezalel Smotrich and the Minister for National Security Itamar Ben-Gvir. Now, Itamar Ben-Gvir has announced last night that he will resign if this agreement will be passed in its current form. So he and his faction will certainly be expecting him to resign from the government, but he doesn't have alone the numbers, in a sense that he will bring down also the government with him. So we have to wait what Bezalel Smotrich will do. It's expected that they will vote against this deal, but the deal itself will still go ahead. Now, we also know that the opposition parties have already proposed to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and they've done that again late last night, said to him, you have a safety net. We need to go ahead with this deal. So they would be basically stepping in during that time, but also only for the time of this, when this deal is being carried out. We have to wait and see if other ministers, and we heard at least from one Likud minister who had said he might vote against this deal, what they are deciding. So there's still, until this vote is passed through, at least on the Israeli side, we have to wait and see how this will develop.
Tanya, thank you very much for now. Our correspondent in Jerusalem, Tanya Kramer. Well, if the deal goes ahead, Hamas would initially hand over 33 hostages in the coming weeks in exchange for Israel freeing hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. But ahead of the announcement, Israel has stepped up airstrikes in Gaza. The Hamas-run health ministry says that they killed more than 80 Palestinians.
Mixed feelings among Gazans. Celebrations at the news of a ceasefire. Mixed with doubt that it will happen, and tinged with sadness at everything that has been lost. Their trepidation is backed up by events since the announcement. Israeli airstrikes punctured the celebratory mood, taking more lives with them. The deal is supposed to come into force on Sunday. The uncertain days ahead are making some here nervous.
We must remain cautious. We're afraid there could be an even worse bloodbath than before. The next few days could be even more difficult than the whole of the last year. We just hope the bloodshed stops.
Others are noticing the positive impact the news has already had on their everyday lives.
The price of this bunch of vegetables used to be 30 shekels, now it's 5. The ceasefire news has reduced the prices. This bottle of oil costs 10 shekels now. It was 30 before. We want cigarette prices to be cheaper too.
And others are thinking about the future.
We need to start thinking of solutions. Enough destruction and wars. We're exhausted. 15 months of humiliation and living in tattered tents, enduring the summer heat and the winter cold. And there's the children who died of cold.
Israelis also appear to be apprehensive.
We still feel like there is a threat from Hamas. Like, if we're just gonna let them Gaza again, they might be doing October 7th again. Like, no one guarantees differently.
I think we're gonna fall back to a war again with the Gaza citizen, with Hamas.
I think the agreement is a good agreement. Once we get all the hostages back and the dead bodies that are being held there captive. But I think that Hamas will rearm and regroup again, as we see in the coalition that there have been some discord against this agreement with Hamas.
The ceasefire deal is far from certain, and it seems that few on either side are willing to believe it until they see it.
Well, the United States has been instrumental in helping to push the Gaza ceasefire deal over the line. The agreement has been months in the making. Addressing American troops in a farewell speech on Thursday, outgoing President Joe Biden admitted the road to a deal between Israel and Hamas had not been easy. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, who officially takes office on Monday, has said the agreement would never have happened without pressure from him and his team. Well, DW reporter Michelle Stockman is with us now for more on the U.S. perspective. Michelle, President Biden has invested a lot in getting this ceasefire deal in place before he leaves office. Tell us more about that.
President Biden is a man in the waning days of his presidency, staring into the void of his legacy and looking for something to hang his hat on because he has lost the right to rule to his biggest political foe. And many are looking at his presidency with very skeptical eyes at this point. He has put enormous effort in reaching this deal. If you look at the diplomats that he sent, Anthony Blinken, months of shuttle diplomacy to try and get the hostages released and to end the destruction that's happening in Gaza that's largely affecting civilians. Also, he has put Brett McGurk, who is a very experienced negotiator in the Middle East. He priorly negotiated the release of American hostages from Iran, who have laid the architecture for this deal. However, it's just not sure that he's getting everything he wants. Last night, he addressed the American public on MSNBC, and I just want to say what he said here. Biden says Netanyahu must accommodate legitimate concerns of Palestinians for long-term sustainability of Israel. So as much as he has laid the architecture for this deal, it appears he's not sure he's getting everything he wants. And he also has been accused by human rights groups of not doing enough to protect Gazan civilians.
So that's President Biden.
Yes.
Incoming President Donald Trump. He has said he wants a deal in place, too, before he takes office. Why is this so important to him, even before he takes office?
Well, I have to think we need to look at the timing. Donald Trump wants a big victory to go in on right from the top, something that he can brag about. I am here, I'm making the deals that are going to make America great again.
Before he even becomes president.
That's right. He sent one of his top lieutenants, so to speak, his golf buddy, Steve Witkoff, who is a billionaire investor and developer. And sources told the Israeli media that Arab officials said he did more to convince Netanyahu to take this deal than Biden had done over months of diplomacy.
Both Biden and Trump are claiming credit for the ceasefire. What does that tell us about the priority of the Middle East for the administration, the U.S. administration moving forward?
I think for both men, this has been a huge deal. Israel is a long-term ally of the United States in the Middle East, a democracy that the U.S. wants to back. However, Israel's conduct in this conflict has dragged down the image of the United States. Both men don't want to see that happen. And they actually want this off their plate so they can focus, well, Trump does, so he can focus on what his nominee for Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said is the near-peer biggest foe of the United States, China. So he wants this gone. He wants to focus his efforts on combating China.
Michelle, thank you very much. DW reporter Michelle Stockman.